So, let's talk about this. This game, in general, is a decent game. It is not a good game. It is not a bad game. Yeah. This is, like, from my first experience of playing it, I instantly knew that this is gonna be an alright game. Not a perfect game. Like, I hoped for an overwhelming experience, but in the end, or after the first hour or so, I knew I would not get what I wanted. In fact, when I already watched some people play this game, it became to me more obvious that it would not be so easy to enjoy a lot of it. Like, day one, it got review bombed on Steam because it had massive problems in performance. Yeah, a lot of people seem to have massive FPS stutters, and I mean, towards the end we were in regions, and especially that one region where we would have trouble maintaining a high FPS rate. We would still have a stable one, which is very important. The FPS rate would be stable, but it would not be something to be desired, you know. And most of the times it was around 46, and later on it would average out about 36 frames sometimes, and it is just simply not a good deal. The question becomes, how much does performance matter? This game got marketed to me as a horror game, similar to the Dead Space genre. So I expected a horror action game, or even when I knew that some Dead Space developer were on this, I expected something around Dead Space 2, which was more action horror than horror action. Like the first one was basically horror action, the second Dead Space was action horror, and the third Dead Space was action horror. Like, you could see that the devs already in Dead Space 3 did not have as much freedom as they had in the first game. But that didn't influence my preparation for, or my expectations for this game, since I expected now to have a certain quality. And I must say that in the first parts of the game, I kinda got that quality. Like, the gameplay was fluent and fun, but what this game definitely lacks is polish and pacing. Like, in the end, what do we know more than what we did at the start or mid of the game? We barely even know anything. All we know is we dug up that some futuristic orientated group dug up the parasites from this moon, and is now trying to evolve humanity into the next phase. But the parasite is less cooperative, so they have to create a spectrum of spacemen. So that's why they sacrifice so many people here on this station. But the question becomes, what of a story is actually here? We basically only ran around and hoped to survive. And as a premise for a horror game, that is not necessarily a bad pretext to set. No, you don't want someone to get comfy in your horror game. But one of the things that definitely feels left out is accomplishment, because we didn't do anything. Like, sure, we ruined someone's his day by not giving him the cure his doctor hid from him, or like we don't even know if Miss Moller here why she didn't give the Q experiment to the warden. Like, why would she not do that? Yeah, that's just weird and inconsistent. Especially Ferris, the alpha, is one of the weirdest characters in this entire game. Like, first he is like all nice and stuff, and then he needs to be strict with us, but he also has this hint of he doesn't want to do his work, which is also reflected in one of his audio logs, which just said that he likes the previous warden more. I said that I didn't know if he was a psychopath or if he just did the job because he had to do his job, even though he doesn't like his job. Which then, in both cases, would make him the perfect fit for his position. The only problem with making or classifying him as psychopath is that those guys often are extremely manipulative of the humans around them, which Ferris did not do. He was just emotionless and wanted to get the shit over with. Even his last dialogue lines, where he just wanted to kill us, it's not enough to, like, he was more a fighting addict in those lines than a psychopath. But then you could also argue, yeah, he was already under some influence from the parasite, but which raised his aggression levels. Yeah. But overall, that reflects what is really missing in this game, because it has a good amount of polish, even so we have those performance issues. But the big problem is really that the overarching story is not really giving you any points of interest to grab onto. So even after we finish, we still don't know what the fuck is going on. And that is the big problem. Like, many people compare this game to Dead Space, which is not a good idea. But I recently heard someone make the comparison that this is more like The Last of Us with Dead Space aspects, which made way more sense in my head. But The Last of Us was a very strong story game, and that is missing here. And what I fear for, the big problem is that even if they fix the game, get all the bugs out, make release extra DLC and everything, that the story isn't really making much sense, or isn't really giving, that is not going to be fixed by one DLC. We barely even know the motivations of, we only know that they want to go to space, and that's why they want to make the human body more durable. That is all we know. But then they also were very religious towards the end, chanting me as some sort of hyper carrier or something, which hints at that we are not just the grand survivor, but possibly we are infected. And that is what was helping us evolve. Like, here's where I really have to go into the Dead Space comparison, even though I don't want to. But Isaac lives through a extremely similar story. And we learn a lot about the Unitology cult in his storyline. We actually get the illusion of maintaining the necromorph plague on Aegis 7, since the game tells us very clearly that putting the marker there will put the hive mind at ease, and he will go back to sleep, something along those lines. I guess now we come into the combat system, and that is the main, but this combat system does not really feel rewarding. because all you do is count to 3 or count to 4, do an power action, and then again count to 3 or count to 4. Shooting the enemy is actually very ineffective and only works proper in lower difficulty, but already on normal you will run into massive difficulties. And the same was also in Dead Space. But Dead Space had a very rewarding feedback in their combat system. Back then, that the necromorphs were to be disassembled, like shoot off the limbs was the meme instead of shoot the tentacles, and you would try to aim for each limb, and then when you shot off a leg, the necromorph would fall to the ground, still claw towards you with it, pulling with the arms. And if you shoot off the arms, the necromorph would be not able to be damaged and be considered dead. So the moment you learn about stasis and can freeze the enemy for a time being, I did a lot of playthroughs where I would max out stasis first and not do any weapon system first, because I could then build up a lot of ammunition or money to upgrade the weapon of my choice before using it. So I learned stasis keeps the enemy slowed in place, so I can even shoot off the arms, which was one shot cheaper than the shooting the legs. I even got rewarded with less ammo waste or ammo cost. And here the reward is that if you pull off a full combo, getting interrupted is incredibly hard. And all you get is the action window of shooting the enemy, which then opens up another combo window. And at the end you shoot him to open up the next combo till he is dead, rinse and repeat. That was what instantly perked out to me. That is the cheapest way of fighting an enemy, since you will barely use any ammunition. If you stay locked in combat, you will also not lose HP. And like I always said, the only variable then comes down to me not messing up or not dodging when it was time. One of the things why I think this game lacks massive amounts of polish and they ran out of time at some point is the scene out of Dead Space 1, where a giant tentacle will grab you and pull you along a hallway. If it meant is similar to the neck biters in this game, but way more brutal, and that tentacle has a weak spot that you have to shoot, and if you don't shoot that weak spot it will pull you into an endless black hole and you die. Back when they talked about that scene, they talked about how they basically had to pull checkpoints at every meter, at every pixel that there is, to ensure that the animations and the player feels as immersed as possible. Not that he suddenly teleports, both are immersion breaking. And here we had it very often that many fighting scenes would end up in places of the map where it would feel really awkward, really cringed into corners or behind beds, or even sometimes hitting enemies through walls. And since I watched two others before I even bought this game, I can say that those two often got their weapons stuck on an object, on a bed, on a chair, on a wall, which didn't happen to me, thankfully. So that is what I mainly point out to polish. But through those Steam reviews that I mentioned at the start, I noticed that they had like Nvidia 30 series or 40 series, and I have an Nvidia 2070 Super, and I barely had any problems concerning performance. Like I said, the problem in quotation marks for me was that it would be a low frame rate, but it would stay stable at that frame rate. The day 2 or day 1 patch that they had of 500 megabytes smoothened the pop-in error that they had, where the game in of itself would have trouble loading in a holographic. And that is really weird, since that should be where the game polish should be the easiest to show. You know, that asset should have been invisibly loaded in before you go through a door, so that the lag, if any appears, happens while a door is opening. And then, since you don't really pay attention when a door is about to open or opening, the player wouldn't notice as much of the jittering in frame rate. But they aggressively only went for it live. They didn't preloaded that animation. That is stunning to me, especially since this game absorbs a stunning 11 to 12 gigabytes of RAM. There were barely any time where it would have less consumption of it. So the question is, why is it not preloaded? At this point, I want to highlight once more that the combat does not really feel rewarding. It is brutal. Like, you can feel every hit your character Jacob does. Yeah, you have a lot of oomph behind every hit. But the problem really is that you are doing that combo, and that is all you're gonna do. Even shooting does not really feel impactful. Like, enemies barely even stagger. They only stop when they lose a limb. But even before the end, like, I had that one mutated guy charging me, and I have a fully skilled in power grip GRP module, threw an enemy about his size at him. He didn't flinch. He dashed through 5 extra steps and then damaged me. And those are the things that disengage me from combat, which is why I had been save scumming so much. Because, like, some things really do not need to happen. And if you see this here in the top right, this is the awkward corner fight I'm talking about. Like, there are spikes here. The moment an enemy is in spikes, it's an instant kill. But I punch him into the corner. Like, I already feel like he should be dead here, since he is moving into these spikes. I shoot him again. He flinches, goes back. He's still not dead. And I punch him in. He is still not dead. Even so, he clearly has motion animations where he hunches over and his ass should be making contact with the spikes, which is so weird. Yeah. Also, a problem I have with the death animations is that they are too human. I think that's the point in general why the game didn't spook me as much, or not spook, gross me out as much, is because I almost always had the feeling that I was fighting human melee fighters. Which is where I have once again have to make a comparison to either Resident Evil or the Dead Space games, because the necromorphs in Dead Space look human, but you do not feel like you are fighting humans because of their body language. And I think one of the most important things is necromorphs have blades for hands, and that makes like the moment even a human has a knife in his hand, it feels like he is a threat instantly. But since these enemies here are not weaponized, besides beating, even those two-headed Gale launcher boys didn't feel inhuman. Yeah, they mostly just bitch slap you around. So, and then the death animations really feel like you get bodied, which also supports my they feel like humans argument, because it's like you feel always like you're in a tavern fight. The big problem is that the enemy sure looks mutated, but his subconscious of a human is still there. Like they still use the same emotion set. And in I'm gonna use Resident Evil 4 as the main example. There it is that the humans, when they attack you, are either slow walking and they drag their feet, they wobble around a little bit. You notice that they are still conscious, but they are like dizzy as if they were sick. So you definitely notice that something is wrong. You right, here's where I find out that there's my mortal enemy. And later on, when in Resident Evil 4 the zombies also get the parasite ability, where they have the chance of birthing a parasite out of their head, that thing doesn't look human anymore. Even the body looks completely controlled by that parasite, and you just do not want to deal with that bullshit. So you get grossed out. You do not want to touch that, you do not want to fight that. That is what this game is missing. Even so, the enemies are greatly bubbly. Yeah. And blobbed out. I don't know how to describe this better, but in the end, the enemy is, I want to say, because they are round, they are not disgusting enough. Let's take, for example, the baby enemy out of Dead Space 1. It's a small dude that is a range fighter. Only if you are way too close, it will jump you and try to bite your head off. But if you are I think this death scene describes it the best. Like, why does a necro know that it's most important to bash my head in and to snap my neck? That is a human motion. That is not alien at all. So, yeah. So going back to the baby, Um, it is a round thingy magic, and the moment you get grossed out is every time the tentacles spawn out of its back to then shoot you through, shoot you with them, whatever they are projectiling. Gosh. I don't fully know how the GRP works. I'm mainly looking at the footage from the top right, and it just felt like I had a battery charge, but it ran out of time. Like you can see, it will blink, but when I grab him, for some reason, I instantly lose grip. Yeah. Um, yeah, the enemies are just not gross, or in a way, I also want to say they tried too hard, but that is not the case. Because I never felt overgrowth by an enemy and then lost the fear factor after I was too grossed out. Um, um, what, what's next? Yeah, in the end, it's just polish that is missing. Nothing in this game really feels right, besides when you are in an attack animation. And then I had those, like, I really feel like that as long as you are attacking, as long as you are slamming down the button, if you are in motion, you are invulnerable. If the enemy is in motion, he is unstoppable. And even so, that seems to work like intended, it feels really bad for the player. Because the amount of times that I felt like dying to bullshit, and I think that is basically the section that is now in order, dying to bullshit section. Yeah. The last level, the last stage, is one of the most horrendous and badly designed bullshit sections I have ever encountered. Yeah. The So, in general, games are designed around the thing that you're supposed to learn certain skills, certain ways of fighting the enemy, and then you are supposed to encounter an elite or a boss that is supposed to challenge what you have learned. Which is why I absolutely do not like the train section that we have. Which is this video. Not even him, just... Yeah. Like, I found out quickly that if I look at this spot, the first wave will spawn there. And then you just throw them down. But this is the only place on this platform where you can throw off enemies. Like, why are you not allowed to throw off enemies at side sections? Why? Like, there's so much space in left and right, yeah? Why is it that, like, there's like 2 meters? Why is there an invisible wall that prevents the enemies from getting thrown down there? You will not see me try that here, since I did that in the what before that. Also this, like, why is he suddenly stopped? The only thing I can think of is that the moment they mutate, the hitbox isn't like this, but like this. Twice as large. And if there is like a mechanical part here in the top left, where they probably bounce against and are then let down. But that is again another polish thing. Like, see, he stopped at this yellow line. It makes no sense. Like, I kinda learned to work around it by grabbing them, walking backwards, and then throwing them. But even that was very, very weird. Like, I should be able to just grab them and throw them against the wall on the left side. But for some reason, the game is like, nay. Like, I can forgive things like that happened there. And that you shoot someone with a power shot because the animation is running. He has like 1 or 2 iframes where the model is unloading. And it loads the next model, and that's why that shot didn't deal damage. Or maybe it was because it was a limb and not the center body. I can forgive junk like that, even so it's really infuriating when it's an important time. But yeah. This section made no sense. Everything was melee focused before this. So me suddenly being forced to adapt and fight almost ranged only felt extremely weird, especially since they didn't give me any spikes, which is why these fights here in these corridors also, no, not this one. Is it the one before this? Yeah, this one. Yeah, you will encounter 3 enemies and all of them will mutate. It always triggers. The other enemies I can like critical hit and stuff, but these 3 will always trigger. And this entire room has no spikes where you can throw enemies against. And not this one. And this corridor fight here had spikes all over. Every other room had spikes for utility. But this weird side quest for just 1 dialogue box doesn't have spikes to help you out. Which makes this a challenge in quotation marks. And I always say that, like, There are certain challenges I enjoy, but there are especially like time trial challenges, and so I absolutely hate those. Um, and combat is okayish, but it gets repetitive quickly. The only reason why I got hung up on this fight for like 3/4 of an hour is because I felt like I could learn something here. Like I knew that I had to get the ranged dude as the first one. If I don't get the ranged dude as the first one, forget it. Like, the ranged dude are probably the most problematic combat mechanic whatsoever. Because, like I said before, I have the feeling of being iframed, invincibility framed, while I am punching someone. Other variophage morphlings do not attack me, but these ranged dudes do, because their range attack is on a cooldown, and when the cooldown is up, they are using it. And while the other mutated dudes are more looking for a 1v1, since the entire game is structured around it. You can splash enemies sometimes or cleave them with your attacks, which then creates an interesting scenario, and I think we can see that interesting scenario here in a second, where the game needs to decide who am I fighting, but in doing so, there is a window where both will try to attack me. Yeah, he will not stand down and wait. So this suddenly gives me not an opportunity to dodge. Sure that I didn't try it this time. I went for the hopefully I can lock him into a combo before I die thing. But then you can see I get sniped from by a launcher guy. Bam. And that throws me off and leaves me open for the kill secure. Yeah. But overall, I must say this is quite the stunning looking game. Especially the first acts look incredibly nice. Even so, it makes no sense. Where's where you get left out of your container? Like, shit is on fire, yo. But the question is, where does it come from? When we get out of here, we do not see any damage in a sort of hull. Like, nothing crashed into us. So, these fires, like, normally you would expect that maybe someone exploded something. But this is too random. The assets that are placed there. Like, being looking at that one. Like, I didn't really thought about it when I was playing it, but why is there a bed mattress here? It makes no sense. Let's say someone tried to build a barricade and it got blasted by a security bot, which they don't do. Like, sure, they have armor penetrating rounds, but they wouldn't ignite. Like, this just doesn't make sense. Like, why is this rioting stuff? Why is there so much random fire? We also don't get it explained, which is, again, like, the story is not fluent enough. So, one last thing though, since we are actually in the visually stunning section. The lighting in everything looks really freaking awesome. There was even a scene where I stopped to highlight one of the very bad textures, similar to here. When you look at it, this looks dirty, but also way too plastic. If you were at a receiving desk in real life, even in a hospital where there have to be even blank spaces and stuff, so no bacteria, so that when it gets dirty, you can extremely easily clean it up. It doesn't look this stiff. Like, I can, now that I freeze framed it, make it clearly out that this is a texture out of a video game. But it's like 80% realistic. And so it doesn't really distract from the actual game. I described it as similar to the Cyberpunk 2077 game on release. I have not yet updated myself of how they improved that game, and they are supposed to have it improved, but I personally have not yet looked at it again. But man, when you look back then when it released and you looked at the highest graphics, you looked at something, it would look amazing. But the moment you single out each texture, like you would look at this thing, at this thing, at this thing, or this plate, Cyberpunk would look extremely trash. Like, really freaking awful. But the lighting spectacle made it fuse together into something that looked amazing. That is something this game does as well, but better, since each texture actually looks better than acceptable. Plus, the lighting in this game is also very, very amazing. Right, this is where I remapped my force key. But yeah, I've not a single bad thing to say about the graphics. Wait, now I remember one. Snow. The snow section looked incredibly awful. Yeah, let's zip through. No, snow wasn't here. Yeah. So, like, it is okayish, but frozen, or like enemies that have snow on them looked extremely bad quality. You can get can maybe get away with saying that it's because of the many gray textures or so. Want a better look at a frozen enemy, because they look so awful. Yeah, look at this crunch. Like, it makes sense that they are more pale and white because snow and freezing cold and everything, but they just look awful. But the worst part is that I personally do not know how to improve this. But it really looks like they are just base textures out of Oblivion or so. Yeah. But everything else, especially the armor, looks pretty nice. Often armor has a lot of cutesy thing about it that is just there to make it look great. You know, like an extra edge or an extra plate. But in general, all the armor plates on this, where there's like really metal, like steel-like armor, are on places that are on vital organs also. Ah, nice. And even the, like, I always believe that they have some sort of Kevlar weaved clothing underneath, similar to like leather armor that would have steel rings weaved in hopes that to block a metal weapon, but gosh, my armor knowledge is forsaking me right now. Yeah. Like, similar to metal reinforced glass, where you have like this net of a metal in the glass that can look nice, but is mainly there for when the glass splinters or someone tries to break in, to keep everything in place, so that you cannot simply punch through a glass or two blocks of glass and be in. But there's then this metal wire that connects everything, which we are. That sort of tech we are also using for high buildings, right? Concrete plus steel beams, and in that we since concrete in general cannot hold its own weight, but through the agility of the steel beams, they both complement each other nicely, and so we get this really nice construction stuff. Yeah, just to say it really quick again, I think there's not a lot of useless armor, and they've done a really good job of making it look cool. But sadly, I have run out of things to talk about, and to come to a conclusion for the very end, it's really that the immersion is there as a singular unit. You are able to get scared in hallways or like in a lot of sections, they are just dark, grim. They make you feel alone, and you feel that dread that you do not want to know what is around the next corner. But the thing where this game fails horrible are big group fights. And I do not mean 1v2, like or 1v3. They are also manageable since they give you a lot of spikes and so to manage. But where the game really hard falls on its face are the later sections where I push a button and 3 enemies just spawn on my side. Like, holy crap, was that infuriating. Holy crap, was that infuriating in this section. Like, you go around, you clear everything out to push the button, and then the button says here have 3 random enemies. These silent dudes, overall I liked them, but I felt like either stealth would dominate them, or they were placed in areas where I never could know that they were there. Because the game trained me before that. Each time I go through a electric door, I would enter a new sector. And I would have to find out what the rules of this new sector are. So, what are the enemies, and so what are they doing? So, yeah. So that suddenly in this area, enemies were up top, even so there was no clear indicator to me that there is an upper level. Like, why would I ever look up here? Like, I know there are enemies on my level, so I'm even trained. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the greatest bullshit of all time. Not only this guy is okayish. You know, introducing the sleeper agent to the game. I get slapped, I get annoyed, but hey, bam, he's dead. No biggie. But I cleared the lower section of this area, the upper section of this area. No one is there. I hear nothing. Besides this dude who slaps my face. Nice. Or is it even after I look at this dude? Ah, yeah, they spawn then on the trigger of me killing him. Okay. This is just dumb. And also, this dude straight up came to me and grabbed me. Like, he wasn't noise checking me or anything. He knew I was there. Else he wouldn't have channeled his attack, his grab. And more of these triggered events kept happening throughout the level. And that is not a good thing. Like, I need to be taught that the game made the impression that this specifically this would not happen. Even in other games, when there is an extra wave spawning, there's like an audio dialogue that says, "Ooh, they are right on you," something like that. Or a horde is coming to your direction, and you know that there will be multiple waves of enemies that you have to deal with. And I remembered the last point that I want to talk about, why horror games can get away with certain stuff. But yeah, the problem is that we have movies, we have games, we have visual novels, we have books. Did I say books? Books, visual novels, movies, games. And they can conduct themselves not equally. Like movies, movies basically need to explain what a weapon does, or that you can make that you can change a weapon model. But in video games, it's as simple as pressing one button. And you see, I can change this module, and suddenly my pistol is a shotgun. Easy peasy. But it also uses different munition. In a game, that makes sense. But in a movie, you would have to explain why the pistol suddenly would need a different charge. Like, why, let's say this is a laser pistol, why does it need a different battery? You know, and here in this game, Callisto, it's a different kind of bullet. And it kind of makes sense, since before you were using patrons to propel one projectile or forward once, and then you suddenly need a projectile that can scatter. So no problem there. That kind of makes sense. And in books, you would have to describe it in one paragraph of text. And then you run into the problem that you do not want that to be too boring. Like, you want to captivate the reader to keep reading, so you cannot drag out the dialogue too much, and to keep it interesting, because at the end of the day, it is just a weapon. But since you cannot show the weapon, you need to convey enough information that the reader at least knows what he should imagine what is in the hand of the carrier. So, which is why I'm kinda disappointed with the weapons in this game. No, I'm not talking about that. Anyways, that's a short side trip. I said it this stream before, that each weapon started to feel the same, since the damage values for their ammunition would level out at the same range. Now I was able to confirm by fighting that two-head guy that the pistol indeed is inferior to the shotgun, and maybe the other guns are on in a similar sense, but just conveying the information through visual makes me think that every weapon is the same and only has characteristics. But since I already have 2 ammo types, and I would diverse into more ammo types, which then costs me inventory space, like, why would I do that? Especially if what I have works already. and the game was not able to confer to me why this new weapon, this rapid fire weapon, suddenly is more powerful than the weapons I already had. Like, for example, that burst fire pistol, like that even looked to me like a weapon you rather want as a starting weapon and then get the hand cannon later on. Yeah, to imprint the player with the thought that, yeah, you do not want to range fight these guys, you only want to like stagger people and stuff, and then later on that weapon gets a mod to still look cool and deal massive damage, but at the cost of inventory space. No? Like the hand cannon and the shotgun will just outscale it. But of course, this is what the game visually conveyed to me. I did not try out the burst pistol, or the burst rifle, because I personally do not like burst weapons. Yeah, I only use burst mode on weapons if I know that I'm not able to hit my target. So the logic is 1 of 3 bullets will definitely hit if I shoot into the general direction. That is the only reason why I would ever use burst mode. Everything else is single fire or rapid fire. And yeah, so to be honest, I now had that extra time to create the dialogue that I wanted to do, a bit of horror games and how games convey it as a medium differently and can take more freedoms than movies, which is why it's okay to drag out the story into a 14-hour experience. How much do I have here? Yeah, 14.4 hours. Nice. And not have it in like a 1.5 hour segment. Yeah, because you have the gameplay, you can tell stories a bit different. And like I already said, this game is not doing a good job in telling its story. You barely know anything about the main story. And they have plans to make more games like this, which is why they do not want to lay their cards open. But then, like I said, the devs also worked on Dead Space. That game did a way better job in conveying its story. So the question becomes, do they have a way weaker story department? Because game devs do not mean a story writer. So, yeah. So, to now come to the conclusion, because I have been rambling on for an hour, 10 minutes, almost, and I didn't expect me to ramble on that long, but I guess there really was a little bit to talk about. To summarize it, I would say this is a visually stunning game. This is a game where every text dialogue or audio log really feels like it has a person behind it and not someone just reading a script. So they definitely gave directions to their voice actors. But the combat is okayish at best. And their storytelling is not ideal if I'm being extra lenient, which I want to be. So combining my entire experience, I really want to give this in a score out of 10. I want to really give this a 6, but it just isn't. It really ranges more through a 4 or a 5 score, like really average or slightly below average. Like, people often think that a game with a 5 review would be bad, but bad is 4 and lower. This is just, maybe bad even only starts at 3. This game really just wants you to fight, and that is what annoys me about this game. There's too much fighting, and the fighting does not feel rewarding. The biggest thing that needs to be fixed about the fighting is the grip, because the grip has been bugging out. People have been unclaimed from my grasp so many times. And that is the most infuriating thing. Not even the that enemies suddenly start attacking me while I'm in an combat with another one, and they get those they get into that 1 second where I'm vulnerable, and then get their attack in. That is not even that infuriating, but every time I lose my grip with the grip model, that is really infuriating. Cannot state that enough. So yeah. So the last big question: would I recommend this game to a friend? I would only recommend it to someone who enjoys an action game with a horror atmospheric. If someone would like to get a through horror experience, I wouldn't recommend this. Like, this section here that is currently on the stream is the only section that through and through made me dread playing the game. Everything else was too action heavy, way too disturbing, and each time I fight, I'm no longer scared. So there you have it, folks. The Callisto Protocol. A game that tries to convey a story, but in my opinion fails horribly at it. I hope that they have hinted at least 2 DLCs. One where you escape, and 2 where your sidekick here, the Asian girl, will get to a station and possibly report this thing to the authorities. Like, why? The main question, I guess, for the devs that I have is, why did they not kill off Jacob and continue the story with their Asian female? What was it that they that got them to path away from that option? Because what we learned from this game is that she now has the potential of being a parasite carrier, because she didn't get a toxin that kills off the parasite inside of her. She got a thing to survive it. So there is a possibility of mending, of morphing together, and she become a superhuman, while Jacob would have stayed the hero we don't deserve, or the hero that didn't, the man that didn't think he did a bad thing but then redeemed himself. Yeah. gosh. Yeah, I want to nag about it, so I'm gonna. Because this is the biggest mistake that they did in the entire game, and then we are done here. So, let me reveal to you the biggest mistake in the entire game. The biggest mistake is not my intro. The biggest mistake is, in fact, this intro scene. All we learn is that there has been a terrorist attack, and these two are for some reason pissed at each other. Like Jacob tries to mend and be reasonable, but Max is for some reason pissed off. But then we get but no, this is actually enough for the biggest mistake, because Max dies, and at the end of the game we get this scene where Max had confronted Jacob of what sort of cargo they are carrying. Like even in this scene in the frost where we were there with the Asian girl, and yes, I have forgotten her name. That is the simple reason why I'm referring to her as that. And there we confirm that Jacob just thought it would be simple medicine. Why would it be a bioweapon? But then at the very end we get this one scene where he has the bioweapon in his hands and is confronted by Max on what the fuck are we transporting here? So this entire game does not make sense. Or Jacob does not make sense, because he always thinks that he didn't knew, but he knew. He just made himself forget or something. But what I believe is it's supposed to be a gotcha moment. But I do not believe that gotcha moment. Like, if Jacob knew at some point that the medicine boxes, contained something hidden, even remotely hidden, he wouldn't have nonchalantly just opened a box for the Asian girl. That wouldn't have happened. Yeah? Or he would have then revealed that there were those vials underneath the medicine. And then you could have had the, but I just kept my mouth shut. And she would then have been like, yeah, but you mass murdered the people of Aurora. Because you just wanted to keep your mouth shut. But that didn't happen. Instead we get a gotcha moment. Yeah, so... But the actual biggest problem of this game is that when he finds out that they have been boarded, yeah, first off, this fire should be leaning more either to the sides of the ship or more towards the landing pod. But that is more minor. But the moment he finds them, look at their equipment. Yeah. Sure, this could be a plate carrier. But he just has this shirt. Yeah, that would be the moment where he would strap himself somewhere, probably in the corridor he just came from. Yeah. Then take some rope. Yeah. It makes himself comfortable on some pipes or so, and then tells Max to open the doors of the cargo bay and just spin the ship a little bit while they continue flying, which then would make them bounce around like rubber balls, because number one, they would not know that they were supposed to hang on to something, and even if they would have magnetic boots, that would actually be worse for them, because Max would first start spinning and then they would lose a hold, maybe one or two start activating their magnetic boots. Let's be lenient and let them have magnetic boots. So, and the other would start grabbing onto something in order to hold. But then the hangar doors open, and the air would instantly start pulling them out into the open void. If someone would have tried in that moment to hang on to something without the support of rope or a belt, he would not be able to hold on to whatever he is holding on to. The vacuum drag would just... that is like 40-50 pounds of drag instantly into something vast. Bro, that would be the easiest way to clear out these raiders. And if someone had magnetic boots, he like I said, he would not be able to grab onto something and would be bounced around left and right from the rotation of the ship, as well as the drag from the vacuum, since the air is escaping. And that is a valid argument, since the game already is halfway supporting it. Like, he here will close off the gate. See, he closes. It says they're heading for the bridge, and then he is opening up the hangar doors to have them drag out. And you can see instantly heavy stuff is moving towards that direction. They barely hold on. Like, imagine if the ship was also rotating at this point. She would not be able to aim or anything. Like, he loses grip, it is just gone. So, besides not doing this easy to do defense mechanism, there's an even bigger problem. Because we had this hissy fit between those two at the start, right? And then Max is telling the pilots here that's a yellow problem. Yeah, and your argument is that this is our last job. Let's just double check it to make everything super safe. Valid argument and everything. Yeah, got a yellow light and probably nothing. Yeah, but it's still worth checking out. And here's the problem. After this exciting duel of fates here, yeah, we suddenly are in a re-entry. And Max cannot pilot the ship. So the question becomes, if we are not at least half an hour, a full hour away from re-entry, why is the goddamn only person that could pilot the ship checking out cargo bay? The yellow arrow. Why is... like, this is only possible this crash is only possible because the only person that can fly the ship is checking some random error in the back, even though he should be in the cockpit because they are close to re-entry. This is stupid. This is beyond stupid. There could be an argument made for the autopilot malfunctioning, but that because the hangar doors are opening, but even that I believe is way too vague. Way too vague. So yeah. So this game already started off very weak in its world building. Yeah. As that tantrum really needed to be here, even so I already went about it when this happened. Yeah. So sadly, it's a 5 of a game, eh? So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and I see you around.